What is architecture? This is the most fundamental question people ask themselves as they start their architecture careers. However, most architects use their whole life to define and revise their own definitions. Nikolaus Pevsner, a famous European historian, described architecture as the buildings with aesthetic appeal. In Lebbeus Woods, a modern architect, opinion, built works are merely concepts brought to life, and should also have the immediacy for contemporary conditions of living, thinking, and working. For the famous female architect Zaha Hadid, architecture is the thing that can excite you, to calm you, to make you think. Nowadays, the Chilean architect Alejandro Aravena has his own definition in architecture, and he has become more prevalent in the field of modern architecture over the past 20 years. He founded his own studio and works as executive director at the firm Elemental. Aravena has been distinguished as one of the most socially engaged architects to receive the Pritzker Prize. He has a unique approach to design in the built environment because his work draws more from process-driven activist design than from any rational modernist agenda. Therefore, he has a particular opposition to irrelevant architecture, meaning that all of his work has a clear connection to an aesthetic and purpose in the built environment. Aravena cares for the improvement of society and stresses the importance of having a connection with people. Given Aravena's position on activism in regards to architecture and his focus on serving the people, he argues that design must not only reflect the architect's desire, but also fill the needs of society as well as the surrounding environment and community. One of Aravena's most notable projects is the Quinta Monroy housing project, built in Iquique, Chile. Aravena established the firm Elemental with the intention of designing low-cost housing solutions in Chile, right as a significant policy change took place regarding financing, construction, and understanding of subsidized housing in their native country. The project aimed to design public housing for 93 families in Quinta Monroy. Aravena's proposal for the project fit within the structure of the policy known as Vivienda Social Dinámica Sin Deuda, or Dynamic Social Housing Without Debt, implemented by the Chilean government a year prior. VSD-FSD, Dynamic Social Housing Without Debt, provided families with no access to credit and ineligible for mortgages a $7,500 voucher to cover the costs associated with constructing their housing unit. This voucher gave the poverty-stricken community just as much of a role as the architects in the buildings of Monroy housing. Improvising with the low budget and high population, Aravena was able to create mass housing with limited time, space, and resources by providing the community with a basic framework. From there on, they built for themselves and elevated what was merely the skeletal structure of Monroy housing to a middle-class community in a matter of weeks. From this project and through his ability to think innovatively and contrary to the traditionally modernist agenda, Aravena informs us that public housing architects are not just artists, but are people who have the courage to solve problems that ultimately benefit future residents. Along with the firm's strong focus on tackling the problem of affordable housing, they also take an activist role on the environment regarding a structure. For instance, Aravena designed the Angelini Innovation Center in Santiago at Universidad Católica de Chile, using reinforced concrete to convey a contemporary design while avoiding the serious greenhouse effect in the interiors of glass buildings in the desert-like environmental conditions. The contemporary design has greatly reduced the cost of energy conservation and serves as an effective way to unify the working community inside the building by removing interior blinds and curtains. Nowadays, modern architecture is built simply using innovative construction to show the beauty of a building. However, architecture should blend into society and the environment. Ludwig Mies van der Rohe's motto, "Less is more," has influenced the progress of modernity. Although the Farnsworth House, one of van der Rohe's most notable projects, brings the visual aesthetic feeling of an open house exposed to the environment. Its walls are too thin and make the house feel cold in the winter and hot in the summer, making the house unsuitable for living. Given the success of Mies van der Rohe's project, Aravana's design to join the architecture with the surrounding environment is one aspect to find a solution directly related to the residents' actual needs, concerns, and lifestyles.
Aravina's goal to promote activism through his design while meeting society's needs becomes apparent in many different ways. For example, during the Monroy Housing Project, Aravina simply provided the community with a frame, and individual families took the design forward. This process channeled people's own building capacity and fostered a greater sense of community and individuality, further proving that design is more than just fulfilling the architect's desire, but also meeting the needs of the community. Another critical component to Aravina's design process is to note the environmental conditions, mainly through the Angelini Innovation Center project. His inversion of the exterior and interior spaces allowed for more community and stability-oriented buildings. In this regard, Aravina claims that sustainability is nothing but the rigorous use of common sense. In agreement with this statement, a critical part of meeting the needs of society is also meeting the needs of the current environment and community. The notion of common sense, mentioned throughout Aravina's point of view, is important to note because a belief in society comes from the belief in people's use of common sense, especially when dealing with practical design. After all, Aravina states that the force of common sense and the force of nature all need to be translated into form, and through this translation into form, architecture begins to become life. Aravina is seen as one of the foremost proponents of socially aware architecture. As with any issues of any social importance or relevance, there is bound to be some strong opinions regarding it. Aravina's politics are left of center, yet not radically so. In his opinion, architecture has two primary themes. One is the awareness and consideration of current conditions, and the other is the issue of time and how to keep up with it while passing its test. Architecture is an expression of needs and desires and forces that are outside of yourself, be it a government, a private person, or a community, according to Aravina. He believes that it is incredibly important to maintain a strong sense of community and awareness when approaching architectural works. However, other modern architects have expressed their disagreement with this ideology, saying that if social good is the priority for architecture, the practice will suffer in terms of innovation. This is not necessarily the case. In fact, a shift of focus from a purely aesthetic scope to more of a humanitarian scope will foster entirely new design ideas. Aravina's works are examples of how well aesthetics and social purpose can coexist in a structure. The Villa Verde housing project in Chile is a prime example of this work. The primary focus while designing this complex was the idea that middle-class families in Chile could not afford a larger home that was of good quality or simply structurally sound. Due to this, people were living in smaller homes than what could accommodate their needs, and so the idea emerged of giving those individuals half of a larger good house. This would also allow people the opportunity to build for themselves, facilitated by building workshops provided by Elemental. These homes were also built to survive hurricanes and floods. Aravina took the concept even further with his opinion on the funding of the project. Aravina believes that social housing should be seen as an investment and not an expense. He advocated for a government subsidy that would later be more than repaid as the value of the homes would increase with the additions from the residents. This housing complex demonstrates innovation not only in social work but also in design. The outcome of the design plan is one where half of the homes are identical to the others, and the other is extremely unique based on each resident's individual design. The overall design is striking and demonstrates Aravina's holistic approach. Furthermore, the failure of the Pruitt-Igoe housing project, a public housing complex built in St. Louis, Missouri in the United States and designed by Minoru Yamasaki, provides proof that Aravina's work deserves esteemed recognition. The Pruitt-Igoe housing project began as an experiment to a new approach to urban public housing in the United States. However, the project quickly fell into resource disparity and was ultimately destroyed. Unlike Aravina's community-based design in the Villa Verde housing project, where residents have the opportunity to build a portion of their residence themselves, the residents of the Pruitt-Igoe housing project had no say in the design process of the complex and did not even have access to a public mailbox within the project's confines. Not only did the Pruitt-Igoe project fail to foster a sense of identity among its residents, the project can be recognized as a symbol for a systemic problem that was built to simply fit the racial stereotypes of the modern movement, given that the majority of the residents were members of minority groups and lower-class society. As can be seen, Alejandro Aravina's work and philosophy exemplifies the innovation that can be achieved when social awareness meets quality architectural design. Aravina's focus on fulfilling the needs of society, along with his own desires, has allowed him to engage and positively impact the communities he has worked in around the world. He has also fundamentally shifted the definition of architecture to one where helping people is the main goal. Moreover, the humanitarian architecture work done by Aravina has become a critical part in the shift towards a more socially committed practice by comparison with the beginning of the century.